There's a report from the New York Post that says that the alleged shooter was a big fan of playing a video game. He was a big video gamer, and he was apparently quite addicted to pornography, and so much so that he actually played video games that are pornographic. Apparently, there are video games now. We will live to see horrors beyond our imagination, as I think Nikola Tesla told us. He was a big fan of this video game. He played it quite recently. And not only was he gay, and not only was he dating a self-identified trans, but he was also something called a furry. A furry is someone who is sexually attracted to human beings in anthropomorphic animal costumes. And so I guess the video game was a gay, furry video game. According to the Post last week, this account associated with the shooter on the site had recently watched content not only depicting this kind of stuff, but also created by a user named Red Rusker, who is an artist known for furry, who is admitted to drawing images showing underage characters having sex. So, cover your ears if your young people are listening to this. We now find out that the shooter was addicted to video games depicting a kind of with animals that was also pedophilic. How did we get there? How did we get to that point? When I was a kid, I remember when I got my first computer, and I certainly remember before we had the internet in our house. In part, that was because we didn't have a lot of money. So, but there was a time. I'm not even all that old. I feel like an old man sometimes, but I'm not that old. But there was a time within living memory when people didn't have computers in their house. And they certainly didn't have the internet. And let's just say they certainly didn't have Furry Shades of Gay 3 on their computers. There was a time when it existed as it's existed since antiquity, but when to purchase it, you had to go into a seedy store, in a trench coat, trying to hide your identity, and ask for the magazine that was covered up in foil. There was not assumed to be some constitutional right in magazines. It was in like a packaging where you couldn't see it because kids would go into magazine stores, and you would have to talk to a human being and hand him some money and buy the magazine that showed naked ladies. It didn't show Furry Shades of Gay 3. It showed like naked ladies, and that was considered obscene enough. Now, we've let this problem fester. In the 90s, when computers and the internet became popular, there were two laws that were passed. The Communications Decency Act, from which we get the now famous Section 230, which is supposed to regulate the big tech companies, but actually gave them kind of a carve-out. And it was very important to political debates over speech on the internet a few years ago. The Communications Decency Act primarily was about decency in communications. And the Child Online Protection Act. Both of these had broad bipartisan support, were signed into law. Liberal judges gutted them. Everyone at that time agreed, we need restrictions on obscenity because it can really pervert people's minds, especially the minds of children. That's why we call it the Child Online Protection Act. And then we just kind of looked away because of liberal judges and because of a laissez-faire ideology. I said, what's the big deal? All right, it's some naked ladies on the internet. Okay, it's some naked men and ladies on the, okay, now it's some naked, now it's like animals on the, that look like, okay, now it's underage. Okay, now it's in video games. Now, whoa. You very quickly get to a degree of degeneracy that previously was more or less unimaginable. The laissez-faire hand of the free market hasn't corrected that. The government exists in part to correct these things. And so while everyone's focusing on the ideology of the shooter, on the defenses of political violence that have come from the left, let's not lose sight also of the obscenity, because the guy was a complete sex freak. Our culture broadly has said you're not even allowed to use phrases like perversion anymore, but he was a profoundly sexually perverted person. I think we all have to admit that candidly. And he was encouraged in his perversions by public resources like the internet. Go to goodranchers.com, use promo code Knowles. Do you know what I had for dinner? Was it 2 nights ago? 1 night ago, 2 nights ago? I had a delicious Good Ranchers New York strip steak. Do you know what sweet little Elisa had? She had a delicious Good Ranchers ribeye. Do you know what actually my favorite thing from Good Ranchers is? It's the Good Ranchers Wagyu burgers. Do you know what else I like from Good Ranchers? Every single thing, especially the seed oil-free chicken nuggets. They are phenomenal. 100% American meat from local farms and ranches delivered straight to your door. I've been a Good Ranchers subscriber for many years at this point, and I can tell you, look me in the eye. It is the best meat you're going to get. Now look at me in the eye. If you're listening, just imagine. It is the least expensive meat that you are going to get, especially, certainly for the quality. It is American meat. You don't need to worry about it being injected with all sorts of weird stuff. It is supporting a wonderful company. There is no downside. It is only upside, and it is shocking. If you subscribe to any Good Ranchers box today, use code Knowles, Knowles. You will get free meat for life. That is goodranchers.com, code Knowles. You will get $40 off plus free meat for life at goodranchers.com. Welcome to the table. One of the things that is supposed to be kept out of the public square that is not protected by the First Amendment is obscenity. Why? Well, it's for the same reason that we don't allow direct threats in the public square, why we need to deplatform people like the streamer Stephen Bunnell. Because if you allow direct threats in the public square, if you protect those, it undermines the public square. It undermines discourse. It shuts people up. It doesn't encourage people to speak more freely. If you permit fraud, lies, the sorts of lies that Jimmy Kimmel said on public airwaves, if you allow fraud in the public square, that doesn't expand the public square, it doesn't add another voice, it undermines, it shrinks the public square because it undermines market integrity. It tells people that you can't trust what is being said. If you allow obscenity and appeals to the prurient interest into the public square, that doesn't expand the public square. It is not, as some perverts in judicial outfits in the 20th century said, it does not constitute protected speech because it undermines speech. Speech is rational. Speech makes use of our reason and allows us to arrive at the truth and to live in accordance with the truth. That's what it's for. Obscenity appeals to the prurient interest. When you're looking at, don't even think about furry shades of gay. Talk about like regular, normal that you'd buy in the magazines in the 1990s before all of this internet stuff. Even that, any kind of material. When you see that, does it make you more rational or less rational? We all know it makes you less rational. This is why advertising tries to get up to the line of obscenity, because they know that sex sells because it prevents you from thinking in a rational way, and it gets you to be more emotional and ginned up and lustful and irrational so that you can be more easily manipulated. It is an open question. Had we properly regulated, as both parties tried to do in the 90s, would that assassin have picked up that gun? He says he was driven by a sexual ideology to protect his trans furry boyfriend. Would he have become so hardened in those deviant desires and in that deviant identity? Would he have been exposed to it in the first place? Would that have happened? You know, we sometimes draw a distinction between public and private sins. There's really no such thing because society is made up of people, and people are the same people in private and in public. Are we going to take that seriously too? It seems to me the obvious reform that has to come after the assassination of Charlie is a reform to the free marketplace of ideas, to protect it, to prop it up again. Not to abolish it or something, but to refortify it such that we can have a healthy conversation and a self-government. A big part of that is going to be obscenity too. It's not just a weird, creepy fact that the alleged shooter was a gay furry attracted to transgenders who played video games and liked the work of artists who depicted minors. That's not just a coincidence. That's part of the whole degeneration of this person's mind and the degeneration of our public square. If you liked that clip, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.